There are no major story spoilers in this video, but I do talk about the gameplay at length. Also, this video was sponsored by Skillshare. Please enjoy the video. Man, this game is really... Wait, is that a bucket? Surely not. Yes, I'm finally safe from the head crabs. What are you gonna do now? It's under the bucket.
We did it, boys.
I remember when I was 7 and I was reading an old copy of Nintendo Power that I found at a car boot sale. Inside was a whole section dedicated to a future release of a console called the Virtual Boy. It promised full-on immersive 3D graphics that could make you think you were actually inside the video game you were playing. Immediately I started to imagine myself in one of my favorite games like Double Dragon, fighting waves of enemies using my actual hands and seeing the streets where the game was set all around me. As I read more and more, I couldn't stop thinking about the endless possibilities. You could even play golf. Kids love golf! But getting a Virtual Boy was a different matter. I was 7. I had no marketable skills unless being a constant pain in the arse had somehow become a profitable business venture. This magical, futuristic box was completely out of my reach. Keep in mind at this time the Virtual Boy was already out. I was just reading an ancient copy of a magazine all about games that were released half my life ago and I just had no idea. Honestly though, this was the world a lot of us lived in back then. You couldn't open a copy of the Sun and find a 6-page spread on Gallagher. It was 1997, the year one of my mum's friends warned me that the internet contained actual demons. There's no punchline here, it's just a scarring event from my childhood. No one gave a shit about games, you just had to take whatever information you found, and I had no money. What was I supposed to do, ask my school friends? What did they know they were 7? Soon after this, they all really got into the Phantom Menace game on the PC, the bloody idiots. Plus, I, to this day, have never actually seen a Virtual Boy in person. The fact that no one I knew ever had one kind of led me to assume it was terrible. And that was the golden rule back then. We didn't have gaming critics spewing irrelevant opinions on blogs that they abandoned months later because their opium addiction needed a more stable income. If no one had something in the 90s, you didn't know it existed or you just assumed it was bad. And in this case, it was a fair assumption. The Virtual Boy was uncomfortable, heavy, had terrible graphics, was too expensive, had games that weren't even in the first person. Eventually though, 2012 rolled around and with it came the first generation of modern VR headsets. These new headsets were uncomfortable, heavy, had terrible graphics, they were too expensive. Overall then, the 90s left me with a bit of a grim view of VR. And as time passed, I began to forget my dream of being able to see games like Double Dragon in full immersive 3D. One day though in 2018, I went to my friend's house who had just bought something called the Vive. Do we snort it or is it a pill? I asked.
Oh, Mum's gonna love that one.
I arrived with my friends and eventually it was my turn to use. I put on the headset and played my very first VR game, Space Pirate Trainer. I will always remember that rush of excitement I felt when I realized this kind of gaming experience was now actually possible. Over 15 years after the release of the Virtual Boy, technology was finally able to deliver what Nintendo had promised. Jumped the gun a bit there, didn't you guys? It even had functional motion controls, that other thing Nintendo mercilessly teased and immensely under-delivered on. Honestly, I wonder how long Nintendo delayed virtual reality and motion controls by systematically misleading the entire gaming community like lambs to their slaughterhouse. Like promising a Mario-themed scuba event, but the tanks are actually full of hydrogen cyanide. Payment up a front! Since the release of the Vive though, virtual reality has unfortunately been on a bit of a rocky journey to say the least. Bethesda took the bull by the horns early on and poorly ported two of the largest open world games ever made into the most computationally demanding medium ever invented. As a result, Fallout 4 VR ran like a room full of people with no legs. And Skyrim VR, while fun, was so fuzzy playing it was like looking at a topographical map of New Zealand after having your corneas forcibly removed. Either way, everyone around the world bared witness to these inexplicably popular ports. Players lost $80 amongst whatever shred of respect they had left for VR being the incredible gaming revolution it is, and everyone left thoroughly unimpressed. Thanks, Bethesda. I mean, what the fuck is going on? Outside of Bethesda's many indiscretions, virtual reality came with a big problem that I think many people still can't overlook to this day, and that's that there are no full-length games that take advantage of what makes VR so revolutionary that are actually any good. There's a lot of fantastic games, don't get me wrong. Space Pirate Trainer is probably the most fun I've ever had playing a video game. I'm top 500 in the world. Beat Saber is incredible, Gorn is insanely good, and Jet Island is utterly wonderful. But these are all very short games and aren't varied or substantial enough to grab you by the balls and force you to choose them over sending your only child to college. People are still waiting for games with a huge, exciting world to explore, a thrilling story, engaging characters. Games like Boneworks and The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners are starting to turn up and are clearly trying to fill this gap, but they haven't quite hit the mark mark on being the revolutionary game VR is missing. Part of my issue with these games is that if you strip away the motion controls and the VR headset, they very quickly become quite average games. Now, this is a pretty tenuous point, of course. You could also argue that if you took the controller away, Mario Kart isn't actually that amazing either.
Can confirm I'm feeling a little left out here.
It's just with so many of these VR games, I feel like I'm playing a fairly average game with excellent immersion. And let's just face it, that's pretty much life on Earth, and I'm fucking sick of it too. Dark Souls has devastating background storytelling. New Vegas has characters so real, you feel like you could reach out and touch them. And Metroid Prime has level design that would put the Sistine Chapel to shame, which I think makes sense. Truly special games need more than motion controls and immersive 3D to stand out. They take you on an adventure of discovery and give you something rare and memorable that you can take away with you. VR up to this point hasn't yet captured this level of quality that it is more than capable of.
I think I'm dying.
But then Valve turn up, I'm sure there's a pun in there somewhere, kick the door down and drop what is extensively the zenith of absolute perfection in the form of a VR game. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Alyx is the tits, and you should all find a way to get it. That's why there's a big not in the title. Let's start off by saying that I'm not actually a huge fan of Half-Life. This is a bad start, putting me in the eyes of most gamers somewhere in the lower quartile of human scum on Earth. Even lower than this guy. It's pretty low. But it does mean I can be objective and view this as an unbranded video game and not jizz my pants every time I see a lambda symbol. They were cool before you got your hands on them, Valve. They actually symbolize something. Well, still related to Half-Life, of course, but never mind. Alyx is excellent for various reasons, but for me, primarily, it finally holds the position of being a great game that has been made incredible by being in VR. If this game was ported to a non-VR medium, it would still be, granted, completely different and a lot less fun, but I still think it would be a fabulous game in its own right, which I don't think I could say about any other VR-only games. Now, there's a lot I want to say about this game, so let's start at the very beginning. In this game, you play as Alyx, who is part of a resistance group trying to fight back against the Combine, an alien race who have taken over Earth. At the beginning, your father is captured, and most of the game is spent traveling across the city you live in to try and rescue him. And that's pretty much all I'm going to reveal about the story. Let's get to the game itself. The game opens up with the world of Half-Life Alyx fading into view. A huge city sits before you, brimming with life. Helicopters soar overhead, people walk the busy streets, gigantic creatures climb over buildings entwined with wires that all lead to an ominous monolith that towers over you.
Oh, yes.
Less than an hour later, you are creeping through tunnels overgrown with alien flora. Later still, you explore beautiful tribal monuments, underground kitchens, biohazard containment areas, floating buildings. This is what the people wanted, injected into my veins! Virtual reality has the power to show you firsthand worlds beyond your imagining, seas of lava, magical islands in the middle of a beautiful blue ocean. Or recently empty streets of concrete office buildings and cemeteries. You see, Valve appreciates how much more effective, unique and interesting environments become in VR, and Alyx provides it in spades. Every environment you journey through is rammed full of little touches that bring it to life. Things will retract or snap as you get close. Rooms are cluttered with objects and details you could look through for hours. The world isn't just varied, it feels alive. Except this guy, well, hopefully he's dead. Although maybe headcrabs fall out of ceilings a little bit too often.
This probably wasn't worth it for a joke.
The graphics in this game are also fantastic. It's honestly a little bit unbelievable how Valve has managed to make this game look so good in VR, both stylistically and how crisp and smooth it is on both the Valve and the Index and the Vive. No VR game, other than Alien Isolation perhaps, has come even close to this level of visual quality and clarity. Just look at this place. I've never simultaneously wanted to go anywhere less and more in my entire life, except maybe outside during a quarantine.
I don't know, that sun is awfully bright.
So sit back and relax as we take a look at the wildlife of City 17.
This is the only way I can get the shots steady.
When Half-Life 1 came out, it broke new grounds by basically inventing the idea of a story unfolding around you rather than directly in front of you. Important or interesting things could happen at any time, even if you were busy looking somewhere else. As a result, most of the events in the game felt like they would be happening even if you weren't there to see them. So thus comes the famous philosophical question. If a dimensional rift opens in an experimental test facility and no one is there to hear it, does it start an eternal war with a multi-dimensional empire?
Everything for a price. Miss Vance.
Alyx continues the trend set in Half-Life by using its environment as well as scripted animations to help tell the story over the course of the game. And like Half-Life, most of it's never shoved into your face. Hell, half of it's barely ever elaborated on. It gives the game a richness that feels effortlessly natural, when in fact it must have been a fucking nightmare to put together. Where Alyx manages to completely break new ground is with the quality and smoothness of its character animations and cutscenes, which are nothing short of absolutely mind-blowing. I have never seen anything like these scenes before, in a video game or otherwise, and half the time when they're going on, you don't even have to look at them. You're in a room stuffed to the brim with so many other interesting details and beautiful animations that I start to feel like I might pass out from sensory overload. Trains crash around you, power lines explode, grand events are happening constantly all around you, and they're nothing short of breathtaking. And I'm not even a fan. I can only imagine what seeing a fully rendered 3D headcrab would do to Harry Half-Life over here.
I'm not going to put my penis in it.
The dialogue is on par with Valve's other games, landing it somewhere in between the works of T.S. Eliot and Hermaeus Mora. It's witty, constantly funny, and at times extremely touching. There's a conversation where Alyx asks Russell, the guy who's helping you through the game over a headset, what life on Earth was like before the Combine, and he describes to Alyx a club sandwich. And from this strange idea comes this brilliant moment of life and depth between these two characters. You can hear how much Russell misses life before the Combine, and how excited Alyx is hearing about a world without them, like your grandfather telling you what life was like during World War II. And honestly, I had found Alyx a little annoying up to this point, as she jauntily wanders off without a care in the world to take on the entire Combine, who make the Third Reich look like the Fourth Doctor. But Alyx turns out to be extremely relatable, reacting to things throughout the game in the exact same way the player does. I remember at one point turning a corner and seeing a small army of Combines strung up by barnacles, and both of us at the exact same time said,
Oh man.
Sure, she's overconfident, but she's taking out an army that makes a xenomorph look like a friendly partial erection. And out of everything Alyx faces, she is notably disturbed by headcrabs and zombies in particular, which gives her personality some much needed balancing. Even one of the enemies in this game, Jeff, has more personality than any character you meet in the entirety of Saints and Sinners.
All your bandages, now. Are you gonna have a few?
Oh no, she's dead.
And he doesn't even say anything. This guy who turns up for about 2 minutes has a hat so incredible, it gives him more character development than every single character in Boneworks combined. I will say at times I found Russell slightly too jaunty, as almost everything he says comes with a punchline which sort of covers up some of his established depth. But overall, he turns out to be far more lovable than annoying, like my wife after the second week of a lockdown. Half-Life 2 transitions between different styles of gameplay at a breakneck speed. 1 minute you're in tunnels avoiding barnacles, next you're driving vehicles across landscapes without any hands.
Oh, this isn't gonna end well.
Decapitating zombies in Blighttown with the murderous equivalent of Pope John Paul II, commanding an army of bugs with balls of your pheromones, or storming the Combine's futuristic headquarters, and I couldn't tell you where one part began and another finished. Alyx isn't quite as varied as Half-Life 2, but still has very distinct sections that focus on horror, puzzles, exploration, action, and combat, all with a pace that ramps throughout the entire game, leading to a suitably satisfying ending. However, although the gameplay is extremely varied, Alyx's real achievement is its seamless blending of action and exploration. You see, in this game you have a set of gravity gloves that you can use to pull objects towards you, which you do by flicking your wrists at the object, then catching it when it comes close. The amount of fun this mechanic is, and remains to be, throughout the entire game is one thing, but combining it with combat sections is where this game absolutely shines. During fights, enemies will usually drop grenades or precious ammo, which you can now immediately get hold of. As a result, the resources you have available to you during a fight are constantly changing. Combining this with the Combine's terrific AI leads to an incredibly dynamic combat system. There is honestly so much going on in the gunfights, I find myself instinctively dropping to the floor into cover at a moment's notice, almost forgetting I have a miniature plant pot strapped to my skull. This is made all the more effective by how well the ammo system is balanced. I never once felt like I had an excess of ammo, and never fully ran out of ammo either, so trying to grab more resources while you fight is very enticing. Saying this, I did unfortunately find the game a little easy. I was using the hardest difficulty on my first playthrough and found that the game still presents healing items in the abundance of soy at a vegan festival. Although I will say, every time I used the healing syringes, I pretended they were real and made a fake little groan of discomfort just for fun.
Matt, what are you doing in there?
Nothing! The antlions are particularly easy enemies to fight too, because as well as being weak to pistol fire, they're slow enough to avoid most of the time, so rarely ever get to hurt you. Half-life? More like, please half the amount of life I have. 3 well-aimed pistol shots will kill one of them, so a lot of these fights end up feeling a little anticlimactic. The hacking minigames you play when breaking into the Combine's security systems are also a little bit simplistic. But with the motion controls, they still turn out to be a lot more satisfying than the inane garbage mastermind rip-off you're forced to do in Fallout, and you all allowed them to do it! Fuck bodies! Had fun dropping mannequins off our roof, Matt. There is still a conception held by truly stupid people that we need bodies in VR.
Maybe I've gone a bit too far with this one.
You have a rendered body in Boneworks, and I can't even begin to imagine in my wildest dreams how difficult this must have been to program. It sidesteps, leans with you, the arms never bug out, objects never get stuck in you, everything is weighted proportionally with your arms. But is it any fun? Is it fun not being able to open doors because you get in the way, not being able to aim because your theoretical head is blocking the back of the gun, having weight so when you climb you shake about like my margarita mixer because dear God, self-isolating is giving me a drinking problem? Is it not fun not being able to hit an enemy because your own elbows are in the way? I'm warning you! I didn't find one situation in Boneworks where having a body made things even slightly more entertaining. Valve looked at this problem, called a board meeting, sat down and said, fuck it.
Sorry, sir, my son's at work with me today. Could you keep it clean?
Your son's fired, Benny.
He doesn't work here.
He does now. In Alyx, we don't have arms, and Valve has proven that we don't need them. Suck it, PC gamer. It's not just the arms, though. Almost every single challenge virtual reality presents as a gaming medium was analysed and addressed in Life Alyx. Here are some examples of problems they encountered and totally overcame. Getting a flood is slow and clumsy, auto-teleport kicks in. Dropping weapons is frustrating, weapons are only equipped from a menu. When I crouch, I can't grab my ammo. Everything you need is selected from over the shoulder. Am I supposed to go over here? Teleport tells you where you can and can't go. Objects with weight are ruining my immersion, no more weighty objects. Different movement speeds make me feel sick. The game is built around a single running speed. Jumping is disorientating. The game's linear and designed so you always drop down, but you can teleport if you need to. Reloading keeps missing, huge room for error. I think my cat is trying to kill me. Here's a safety cage. Matthew Matosis once made the analogy that if you have a controller for a game that doesn't work, say 10% of the time, then the controller simply could not be sold. But 10% of the time in The Walking Dead or Boneworks, I try and store a weapon over my shoulder and accidentally throw it across the level into some poor person's face, or try and load a clip into a gun and it completely misses. Motion control will probably never be flawless because I'm the one doing the motions and I'm far from flawless. But Valve have managed to make an interface in Alyx that is immersive but still incredibly functional. And when motion controls are used, they've clearly been rigorously tested to ensure they almost always work. But is that any surprise? Look at the number of people who made Alyx. I bet together they could successfully colonize Mars, the talented fucks. This team is bound to be at least 3 or 4 times the size of the next biggest VR development team on the planet. Virtual reality is still at the stage where huge development teams simply aren't cost effective because not enough people have VR. What's wrong with you all? You could all be playing VR, but no, you had to buy all that food for your starving family. Saying all this, I did still find I had a slight issue when changing weapons in Alyx. You see, to change weapons, you press the weapon select button, then move your arm in the direction of the weapon you want to select. Seems okay. But whenever I was flustered in the middle of a fight, I found myself trying to change weapons while I was moving in and out of cover. This meant I would accidentally select the weapon corresponding to the direction my arm was moving at that time, giving me perhaps a pistol when I in fact wanted a grenade launcher. This may have just been me being panicky, and although it wasn't a huge issue, it perfectly highlights the kind of problems motion controls can have. In Space Pirate Trainer, I get as flustered as a YouTuber after his 4th cup of coffee, yet I always manage to select the correct weapon because it's done using an analog stick, which is difficult to mess up. Perhaps in Alyx, if we were to swipe along the index's touchpad to the weapon we wanted, it would improve this issue, but I think it looks like the touchpads on the index are a little too small for this, especially since we can't see them. Speaking of controllers, I played Alyx on the Vive as well as the index, and both play this game really well. It's just the index has slightly better visual quality, and controllers, microphone, sound is more comfortable, works better with Steam. I was sitting with my friends last week when one of them asked me to pass them a Switch controller, and I honestly pointed at it with my hand and tried to flick it into the air towards me. Needless to say, I killed them all in a fit of rage to avoid further embarrassment. What I'm saying is Life Alyx is so immersive you really can forget you're playing a video game. And it's important to note that being immersive isn't about mimicking real life perfectly. I find New Vegas immersive, and half the time the maps look like they were lifted from electron microscope readouts that have been left in the sun. Immersion is truly broken when something happens that reminds you you're playing a video game. And nothing reminds you of that more than when you try and do something in a game and it doesn't work. To avoid With this, wherever possible, Valve have chosen simplicity over being realistic, and as a result have made one of the most immersive VR games ever made that sets the benchmark for what VR can achieve. My hope is that this game will prove how good virtual reality really can be, and help us get to a bigger consumer base where larger VR development teams and budgets start to become viable. This game is so good, I think it proves that screens in VR headsets don't need to get that much better right now. What we need to work towards instead is wireless VR headsets, because nothing is less immersive than having a wire trip you up when you're trying to avoid a brain-sucking parasite.
Either way, this game made me a proper Half-Life fan, and I'm off to play Black Mesa. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed the video. It's the fucking cheesiest outro I've ever done. Because we're in quarantine, my wife cut my hair, and I think she's done an okay job. I'm just gonna check the back. Does it look okay?
Whew, that was a long video. I haven't slept in days. I'm really happy to say that this month's video was sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community with thousands of classes for people who want to learn new skills or just be more creative. It's a great place to learn all the stuff I love, like creative writing, film, animation, and even better business practices. As someone who's done a lot of studying and who was also a teacher, I find the way that schools and universities teach a little bit boring. Skillshare, though, is filled with incredibly creative classes that will engage with you to keep you inspired, with videos that are concisely edited to help make the skills easier to learn. There are loads of tutorials on things like editing, for example, which I clearly need to take. But interestingly, I've found Productivity Habits That Stick by Mike Vardy amazingly helpful. The main thing I've learned from this class is to give every day a specific focus, a goal. Usually I just wake up, do as much work as physically possible, and then go to bed. This class has helped me calm down and be more creative, with less anxiety. And having more structure is especially important considering what is going on with COVID at the moment. Not that you've heard about that. Skillshare is designed specifically for learning, so there are no ads, and there's always new premium classes being added. So you can stay focused and go where your creativity takes you. And it's less than $10 a month for an annual subscription, which is pretty good. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get 2 free months of premium membership, so you can go out and explore your creativity.